Hi, my name's Jim and I'm going to be stepping you through a demo of the StorageMade Easy Enterprise File Share and Sync Fabric product. So I'm logged in to a test account called Acme. It's a team account and at the moment I'm on the home page. In this case the home page has a couple of RSS feeds, one for the StorageMade Easy blog, one for the OpenStack blog. And these feeds can be configured and moved about, or I can add new types of widget that will appear on this content page. I can put my own custom message, I can have other RSS feeds or a Google Calendar or a Trello board or something of that nature. These operate inside of a sandbox and they can be customized and you can add your own. The first thing that we're going to do in this case is we're going to go to our cloud dashboard and we're going to add a new provider. In this case it's going to be an OpenStack provider. We're going to use a SwiftStack OpenStack version, so we'll add it using the SwiftStack connector. You can see that we already have some cloud providers, one of which is Amazon S3, which this fictitious company Acme is using for archive. One of which is Google Drive. So again, this fictitious company Acme is a Google Apps customer. Each of their users get some free data from Google Apps on their Google Drive. So that's added. And then we, in this case, because we're using our SaaS appliance, they happen to get a free provider from us where we host files on Amazon S3. Of course, that wouldn't be available on the on-premise version. So the first thing we're going to do is add a new provider. We can choose from a whole list of different providers. In our case, we're going to choose SwiftStack, which is a type of OpenStack provider. As soon as I click the Add button, I'll be taken to a wizard where I can, name what I want this to be. Add my endpoint for SwiftStack and also add my username and password. Once we've entered the username and password, we get access to the SwiftStack account and we can choose whether to add existing buckets or whether we want to create a new one. In our case, we're going to create a new one and work with that. After the bucket is created, because it's brand new, there'll be nothing inside of it. We will check anyway. As you can see, there's no files processed and no new ones, no updated ones, no deleted ones. So at this point, we've enabled our SwiftStack provider, we've added it, we have a brand new container that we can use with it. And if we want to add any other containers at any point, within the SwiftStack settings of that provider, we can go and manage any additional containers and add them. So that's pretty straightforward. In the same place, we can also add new containers. So you'll also notice there's some enhanced options for the SwiftStack provider. So we support things like DLO support, temp URL, integration with OpenStack versioning, and also, with SwiftStack we have some extra integrations supporting some of the middleware that SwiftStack has, such as their undelete support. For now, we're going to leave these be and we're not going to make any changes here. We have a separate video on YouTube if you want to see essentially how we can take advantage of extra integration with SwiftStack. If we flick over to the Swift Web Console provided by SwiftStack, we'll see that the new container we just created, Acme Limited, exists, but at the moment has no files. So if we wanted to, we could drop files here that we would later see in our cloud file server. So if we do that, if we just take a file, we drop it directly here, we'll see that it's uploaded. There's the file. If we flick back to our Swift Web Console and we go to our file manager, and if we go to the SwiftStack container that we just created, Acme, it isn't there, but if we do a cloud refresh and we go and refresh against the underlying SwiftStack, we will see that the file pops up. At the moment we're operating in what we call cached mode, which means that the system will show you the files and information that it knows about, that it's gone through its gateway. If you want to operate in real-time mode, then you can do so by going to the dashboard and switching on real-time mode. But even when you're in cache mode, you can always go back and refresh the folder against the underlying container or cloud folder. After we've added the cloud, what we would normally do is to set up users. And as the cloud admin, we get access to a user console where we can literally go and add a users. And you can see we've got one user that we've added here, John at Acme Limited. However, this is using SME as the identity management and provisioning system. Many companies want to be able to use their own identity management and provisioning system, and we do support that. So essentially we can go to auth systems, authentication systems, and we can decide to use Active Directory or LDAP. Now, it tells you here that LDAP integration is only available for on-site, and if I flick over to an on-site version of our product and again go to authentication systems, this particular one has already been configured for LDAP. So if we go and look at the settings, we can see we've already filled in, what we need for the LDAP system. And the way that works is, if we go back to users once LDAP's been configured on this on-premise system, I can choose to import user credentials, which are then essentially mapped to the LDAP system. So if I just do, wildcard, get all the users, you can see that it will go to the LDAP, it will query, and it will pull back all of the users, and it will also pull back all of their roles. And then I can decide which of these I actually want to associate with the SME system. So that's how it would work if we had LDAP set. In our case, we haven't. So what we have here is just SME acting as the identity management system, and I can add new users, directly from here, and they would get an email and they would be able to log in. One last thing to say about the identity management and provisioning is that for some OpenStack distros, such as SwiftStack, we've done some advanced integration that allows you to, once you've imported the LDAP, for the user to log in, and even if they don't have a SwiftStack OpenStack account, it would automatically be provisioned and their home directory created. So that works, with certain OpenStack distros, one of which is SwiftStack, in which we've done some extra integration to facilitate actually the setting up of users through the SME system and the automatic provisioning of their accounts to be a lot easier. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the file manager interface. The file manager essentially maps a more traditional hierarchical file manager on top of what is really a flat object storage view. So essentially, it's, for normal users, it's addressing the impedance mismatch. So what we're going to do first of all is just look at some of the features. One thing to notice is that you can move things around just like you do on your desktop, and if you prefer the flat view, you can collapse the view altogether with regards to the hierarchy. Other thing to notice is that you've got these hover-overs on all the files, each of which does something slightly different. Download, favorite, preview, edit if the document has edit capabilities, comment, and the ability to create a shared link. Here we've just clicked on the hover-over, we instantly get a shared link, we can copy it out, and then we can share it with a user. Now that's an unmanaged link. What we could have done here is we could have gone to the share button, chosen to create a share, where we'd have got some more options. In these options, we can set governance options, such as the ability to expire the link after a certain period of time, to limit the download to a number of times, maybe just once, and to set a password on the link for the user. Now these options can be preset from a policy, which we'll talk about a little later, but the admin of this team can set a policy where these are pre-filled. This enables a company to keep strict control over the governance of its files and how they are shared to external parties. Rather than sending URLs in this way, if you wish, you can have the system directly generate an email to the recipient of your choice. So what I've done is I've just dragged some files onto the web dashboard that you can see here, and if we flick over to the SwiftStack web console, we can also see they've been uploaded here. And once these files are uploaded, I can, if I wish, I can go to preview them just by pressing the preview eye, and you'll see that I have a preview of this Word document, and I can drill into it if I want to read it. I can navigate up and down, etc. Similar for the PowerPoint file. I've got a preview of that file, and I can do the same with other files. And if I want to watch the movie that I've uploaded, for example, I can do a full screen preview of the movie. In this case, just a sample movie that was downloaded from the internet. So I have all that richness in terms of being able to work in this view. And if I wish, I could leave the preview open, and as I flick through the various files, I will see what's been generated. If it hasn't been generated, then it'll take a little time to actually generate the preview, as you'll see here. Once the preview's been generated, then again I can just simply flick through it. So it's a nice way of being able to look at some of the structured data that's contained within the backend cloud storage instance, in this case SwiftStack OpenStack. Other things we can do are create, for example, folders. So I can create a new folder. I'm going to make it a team folder because I want to show you permissions on the folder later. And once I create the folder, it'll be created on the system and I'll be instantly taken to it. If we go and look on the Swift Web Console and we do a refresh, then we'll see that we have a new object, and that new object is called My Team Folder. We can see it's a team folder because it has the / against it, but again, it's still not very clear. It's a flat view, and as you add more objects into here, it will become more difficult to understand what the structure is. Whereas if we go to the SME view, we can expand our hierarchy, and we literally do see it as a folder type structure in a more traditional file system view. And we'll notice that on the folder itself, it's got a little picture of a person to represent the fact that it's a team folder. The other thing to notice here is that even though we've been working with our SwiftStack files stored on OpenStack, we still have access to files stored in Amazon S3 and files stored on Google Drive. The other thing that we can do with these files is, if we wish to, we can move them between clouds or copy them between clouds. In my case, I'm going to take this file and I'm going to put it into my team folder. The file initially was stored on a project on Amazon S3 as an archive, and I've simply picked it up and moved it across to my team folder on SwiftStack. Very simple to do. The SME system handled the move from where it was on S3 to where it now is on SwiftStack. And again, this sample RTF report, if we go to our Swift Web Console and we do a refresh, we'll see that that report is now indeed on SwiftStack. So it's been moved or copied from Amazon S3. So it's a very easy way to be able to move or copy files about between disparate systems. Another feature of the system is inbuilt editors. So one of the things we can do with RTF files, OpenOffice files, Word documents, Excel files, PowerPoints, etc., is we can simply edit them in a web editor through an integration that we've done with Zoho Office. Once we've edited them, we can simply go back and save, and they'll be saved back to the underlying cloud. That doesn't just work for PDF files. We've also built our own PDF annotation editor, in which you can launch either on the web from a laptop like I'm doing now, or directly through a mobile device like an iPad or iPad Pro. So you get a full annotation and editor in which you can do things like signatures, review documents and make them approved, or simply redact, highlight texts with notes. And these can be burned out so that they become a PDF file that you can distribute, or they can be edited amongst the team. So in this case, you can see that this is me who's editing the file, and somebody else who opened this file would add their own and also review mine. The other thing that we can do directly from the Web File Manager is we can check out our tag classification hierarchies. What this means is that you can tag each file with something that you want to remember it by, or give it some sort of classification. It can be anything that you want it to be, to group files, but you can also group files from different cloud storage and then be able to access them using the tag hierarchy classification that you've just given it, which is a pretty neat way to group files from different clouds. Another nice thing you can do is you can search across clouds. In this search example, we can see that we searched on a document, and it went across the clouds and it found all the documents that may be on Amazon S3, Google Drive, or in this case on SwiftStack, and it shows us all of these in the console. Now the product's integrated with Apache Lucene so that it can search the contents of the actual file as well as the meta information, just as the file name. That's a really powerful way to be able to get, essentially a private, Google search of all cloud content, or all, local and cloud content. Now what I'd like to do is to go back to our file manager and take a look at this team folder which we created earlier. I'd like to be able to look at the permissions, and permissions are things that access control lists essentially that you set on a folder to either allow or deny access to that folder to other members in the team of the Cloud File Server. If we go and have a look at the team members, we'll see that the only member we've got right now is John, and we can select him and we can decide what type of access he's allowed to have. In our case, we're going to give him full access, and we're going to apply that. And now we'll see up here that John has access to the team folder. He has read, download, and write upload access. Now, from here, you can create a quite granular permission structure. You can deny access further down the tree, to subfolders of my team folder that you might not want to have John access. And you can also be a little bit more granular instead of the normal CRUD properties of what you might want him to do with that folder, such as be able to create subfolders or even upload files to that folder. So this is a very granular visual permissions access for team folders across your estate of what you can see through the web console and what users have access to. If you have a lot of users, what you may want to do is to group those users into a role and then set permissions against the role. So what you can do is you can go to roles, you can set a new role, and then you can go back to users and you can edit the user and you can assign that user to a role or more than one role. And then when you go back to your visual permissions, you'll then see that those roles are available to be able to set access permissions against. So that's a much better way of being able to consolidate access permissions for a number of users. I'd now like to take a look at some of the options that the team admin has in terms of setting up and governing the team file server. The team admin has a special section that no other user has called administration, and he has access to setting up quite a few different options for the team file server. And you'll see that they're grouped into distinct sections. The first one is user governance, and a lot of this is about turning things off. So, for example, can users see each other? Can they comment on files? Which private clouds are available to them? Now, private clouds are something that clouds the users can set up themselves that the administrator allows them to set. So here you can decide which of those clouds, if any, can be added directly by the end user. And some end users may want to add private personal clouds to their cloud file server so they can access or manage their personal information as well as their corporate information. The only caveat with that from a user perspective is if you allow a user to do that, is that any information that is moved from the corporate file system into the private file system will be audited. Next, we have the file sharing policy. File sharing policy is what we talked about earlier, which, for example, is the ability to preset a policy with regards to the number of, for example, downloads of a file if it's shared, or whether you want to set a time expiry. Maybe you want to set a time expiry of a file. If it's shared over a link, it can only be available for download after 1 day. If these are set, then what will occur is that when users try to share a link, the options that we saw earlier will be pre-populated with what we've set here. Then we have the security section, force SSL for all users, force them to use strong passwords, suspend a user account, for example, if they've had too many login attempts, enable two-factor authentication, those types of things. And then we have encryption. So one of the things that the SME Enterprise Appliance can do is to encrypt files before they're stored at rest onto a cloud storage service or a private cloud service. What that means is that if you've got files stored on something like Amazon S3 or Box or Dropbox or Google Drive, and you want to make sure that those files are encrypted with your own encryption keys, you can set them here. And that would be applicable to all users who access the clouds that you've added through your dashboard. We have similar options that can be set with regards to the other categories that are available to the Cloud Admin. I won't go through all of them, and a lot of them are pretty straightforward. Another thing I'd like to do while we're logged in as the Cloud Admin is to take a look, for example, at things like the audit logs. The audit logs are somewhere where we can go where we can see all file events that have occurred. You can decide how high or how low you want to set the logs, but these logs, are a key part of governance. If you wish, you can simply export them and get them as, for example, an Excel file. So if we just do a quick export here, what will be generated from these logs is an XLS file that we can access and hand off to a compliance officer. If we now open the Excel file that we just downloaded, we have essentially a compliance log of all the file events in the system. This is a global log in this case. It contains all the remote IP addresses of people who interact with the system, whether they were internal or whether they were external through shared links. So it's very comprehensive and something that you can give out to a compliance officer. We can also filter down on a particular user, and again just export an Excel file for that one user if we wish to. These logs are currently stored within the SME system, but if you have a BAM dashboard within your business and you want to output these into syslog format and have them aggregated by a tool like Splunk, for example, then you can do that. There is an option in the appliance settings to be able to have a syslog output rather than an SME output. Now we've concentrated on showing you around the web UI, and there's actually a lot more about the web UI and the features and functions that I could show you. But I think what I would like to do is show you some of the client integrations into the different operating systems. At the moment I'm on a Mac, and one of the things that I get from the Storage Made Easy system is a map drive. So if I bring up my Finder, which you saw earlier when I was dragging and dropping some files, I actually have a Storage Made Easy drive. And you'll see I get the same view as I got on the web, and I can go to my SwiftStack files. These files don't exist in this laptop. They're actually loaded on demand, just like a true network drive, from the remote location. And when I actually decide that I want to view them, it will stream them or load them there and then on demand. So, for example, this file, as you can see, it's going back to the SwiftStack system, and it's actually downloading the file, and then it will show me the preview. At this point, it will be cached, and it will be available to me locally. So if I go back, I'll get it straight away. So this is given this is an object storage system and there can be a lot of structured data, this is a very nice way of being able to get to the different files stored on the object storage system, even if there's many of them, without it actually impinging upon the hard drive space on your laptop. The other thing that I can do is from this toolbar option, is to actually instantly search against the object storage system. And this will search again against all the clouds, just like the web search did. So if I type in doc, it will go back to the system and it will find all of the various options. And if I want to download it, I can just double click, or I can decide that I want a shared link. And again, you'll see that here we've got some preset policies set, because if you recall, we did it earlier. So it's already telling me that the link will expire in 1 day. And I already know that actually it won't just expire in 1 day, because we set the option for it to be only one download. So we know it will only be one download also. So that's a pretty nice option to be able to get access to the shared files. The other thing that we can do is we can use the integration with MacMail. So if I bring up an email, we'll notice that there's an extra little button here, this Me button. If I click on it, then it will load exactly the same view I've been seeing on the web and in the file system, and I can get access to the files. And if I wish to, I can upload a new file and then get a shared link for it after it's uploaded, or if the file is already there, I can simply generate a shared link. And again, we see that we have the preset policy, the same as we had the preset policy when we tried to invoke a shared link from the search. I can choose to share, and that's been inserted inside of the email. And depending on what policy is set, the user may have to enter a password, or it may only be able to be downloaded once. But it's a very easy way for users to get access to a number of back-end storage clouds, including the SwiftStack Object Storage we just added, directly through the email system, which many users spend most of their day in. So now let's take a similar look at some of the functionality on the Windows operating system now that we've looked at the Mac operating system. And again, I haven't touched up on all of the features we've got that plug into the Mac from a client perspective. So we haven't looked at desktop sync, and we haven't looked at some of the other features that just plug into the desktop. But now let's quickly flick over to Windows. I've got an Amazon Workspaces instance here. The SME apps are already preloaded. So one of the things we can do instantly is go to our Explorer, and again we've got our cloud drive, and again we've got the files we were looking at earlier through the web. So this is our container Acme Limited, and these are some of the files that we had previously. And if we want to put more files here, then literally we can just drag and drop. If we want to edit a file, for example, we can double click on the stub. It will go to OpenStack server, it will pull the file back, it will lock the file so no other user can access it, and it will be available for editing. So we can simply edit it and save it, and on the save it will be uploaded back to the server. So you can just work with the drive transparently as if you had those files available on your laptop or desktop, but they're downloaded on demand. Exactly the same as what we saw on the Mac drive. Again, once the file is downloaded, it is cached, and the caching settings can be controlled from the drive itself. So we've got some settings in the drive, and those settings allow us to determine how long the cache files are saved for, and the folder refresh timeout defines how often you go back to the server to pull down new files. Also on Windows, we have a dashboard that gives you access to all of the different aspects of the files in the system. You see it's pretty comprehensive. From a management perspective, it's pretty similar to what you would see logged in as the admin. Other users wouldn't see some of these options. It also contains a dedicated Explorer, which you can use to drag and drop files from the local desktop to the cloud. So it's pretty intuitive. This is extra on top of what you get from just plugging directly into the desktop on Windows. And from here, you can also set up things like your Dropbox-like sync. So this has got Cloud Sync option, of which the Mac has something similar, and you can choose to configure a new sync pair or go through the configuration wizard, and you're literally just pairing up a local folder with a cloud folder. But the nice thing about this is that you can choose different clouds to different local folders. You're not restricted to just, for example, OpenStack. As you'll recall from earlier, we had Google Drive and we also had Amazon, and we could choose folders from either of those. So if we chose the cloud folder option, it would take us back to the view we used to, and we can choose which folder we'd like to sync. So anybody who's used something like Dropbox, this would be pretty intuitive in terms of how this works. And as with what we saw on the Mac, we also have an integration with Outlook. So when you click a new email, just as we did on the Mac, we can choose to upload files and share them, or we can choose to share them directly from the cloud. So we can go there, we can go back to our SwiftStack OpenStack instance, exactly as we did through MacMail, and we can choose a file, and we can choose to share that file. Again, we can see that this is preset. It's preset for the number of downloads. Those can't be changed, and we'll share it, and the link is available. And again, everything you do here through the desktop clients, or indeed all of the clients, they're all audited in that audit log that we saw earlier when we were looking through the web. So this is Windows. Again, we've just briefly touched upon some of the things you can do here from a client perspective, but it pretty much integrates that OpenStack instance directly into your desktop. Now what I'd like to do is to take a look at one of the SME mobile tools. We'll choose Android. We'll just close Workspaces from Amazon, and we will navigate to an emulation of the Android operating system in which we've got our application, our SME application preset. We're logging in to the Acme account. So on login, we get access to a simplified menu. We can go to our files in our cloud, and we can navigate to our SwiftStack OpenStack files. And again, we'll see pretty much the same view as we saw from all of the previous interfaces. And there's a number of things we could do here. We can go and view the file, we can share it, we can download and view it. If we chose to share and we wanted to go and get a URL, then again, you'll see we've got some preset options. We know that it's only going to download once, the expiry period is preset to 1 day, and we get the option to have a password. In this case, all we want to do is get the link is copied to the clipboard, and we can easily paste it into a mail. Or we could have chosen to instantly launch the email and paste it into a mail. The app itself is pretty sophisticated. So if we go back and we go to the settings, one of the things we can do is to turn the whole app into a HTTP or FTP server, in which we can literally, if we're on the same network, we can access it and we can upload files directly to the device, which will appear under the files on device directly from, for example, a laptop client. If you want to get a lot of files on the device that you're taking with you on the road and don't have access to a connection. You can also do things like sync. So this has a sync option. And the sync option allows you, when you're in the actual file manager, to delegate folders for sync. And once they're here, you can choose how they're synced. Are they synced every time you launch the app? Are they synced in the background? Are they automatically synced? So all that you can do from the settings. You've also got an option for Cloud Notes. Cloud Notes are literally text notes that you can take that are stored on the cloud. So if you wanted to take some notes while you're on the move that you wanted to push back to, for example, that project directory directly from the mobile device, you could do that here. The other thing to note with all of the SME mobile devices is that SME as a product plays well with others. So one of the things that it has is the ability to hook into mobility MDM options. So for example, we have customers who use the SME service with Mobile Iron, and they might not necessarily use any of the SME mobile options at all. They will use Mobile Iron to get access to the files. And to complete our demo, let's take a look at the iOS client. So firstly, I'm going to close the player for the Genie Motion that showed the Android, and then I'm going to navigate to our Air Server instance of the iPad. This is the iPad Pro, and I'm going to log in. And here we've logged in. We're in the iPad Pro. We can go to My Cloud Files. We can take a look at our SwiftStack instance, and again, we're literally straight in. I can, if I want to, I can go and have a look at some of these files. This is the file we looked at earlier. So we have all of the things that we would expect here, and exactly the same. We can share. We can see again that we've got some restrictions on sharing from what we set up previously. We can copy the URL to the clipboard, or we could have launched it in email. So exactly the same things that we've had on the other apps that we've looked at. And again here, what we can do is we can turn the whole device into a HTTP or FTP server if we want to upload bulk files to have offline on the move. Also, we can take files on the move from our folder sync. So we can add any number of sync folders from any number of clouds to allow us to keep them in sync offline on our iPad. So what we've got is a pretty comprehensive mobile client, very nice on the iPad Pro, that allows us to work with all of our files on OpenStack Swift, but also on Google Drive, Amazon S3, or anything else that we've got set here. The other nice thing about SME is that it actually has some protocol adapters. Those protocol adapters give you FTP WebDAV access or SFTP access directly into your SwiftStack OpenStack files. And you can use those, for example, to interact directly with applications that support WebDAV or FTP directly on the iPad or Android, or any automated enterprise applications that may need to post files, log files, etc. directly to the SwiftStack OpenStack instance, or indeed any of the clouds that you've got mapped to the SME appliance. And actually I can quickly show you that, as I have Transmit directly on the iPad Pro. Transmit is an app that lets you connect to servers over FTP, WebDAV, SFTP. I have it pre-set up with our connection details to get into our Acme Limited over HTTPS on WebDAV. If I connect into it, you can see we have the same view that we would have through any of the clients, except this time we're going directly through WebDAV. And we have access to all of our files. So this is going through the WebDAV protocol, which would work with any application that supports WebDAV. So again, it's a pretty neat way to be able to access your files directly on OpenStack Swift through any applications that support WebDAV, FTP, or if you have clients who only have terminal access, SFTP. This brings us to the end of our demo. If you want to find out any more about the features at Storage Made Easy, please visit storagemadeeasy.com. Thank you.